Google now has over 3 billion active Android users, which is much more than the number of users who use iOS-enabled phones. As Google continues to grow in status, Apple now finds itself facing a very strong competitor with a global subscriber base. Can Apple compete against 3 billion active Android users, or will Google leave Apple behind? Hello, and welcome to yet another exciting tech-related video. In this video, we'll show you how Google was able to supplant Apple as the #1 smartphone operating system, and what the future portends for Apple. Make sure you like, share, comment, and if you're watching us for the first time, kindly subscribe. Also, smash the notification bell to stay up to date. The global smartphone industry has grown in leaps and bounds over the last decade, with different brands making a killing in the market. However, all smartphones run on one of two software, Android and iOS. These two rival software continue to dominate the market, and over the last few years, Google, the owner of the Android system, and Apple, the owner of iOS systems, have seen their rivalry grow as both global brands compete for a larger share of the market. Apple has been #1 for many years, but Google was a distant second. However, things are beginning to change, as Google now has more Android users than there are iOS users. During an online developers conference not too long ago, Google unveiled different innovative products, boasting exciting and advanced features. One of the products unveiled was the Android 12. Another was the Google Photo service. But these new products were not the announcement that took the tech world by storm. What really rocked the boat was when the company announced through its vice president for Android product management, Samir Samat, that the company now had more than 3 billion active users on its Android platform. The meteoric rise of Google. This announcement came as a surprise and showcased just how far Google had come over the last 18 months. In the last conference, held in 2019 before the coronavirus pandemic, the number of active new Android users increased by 500 million. 2 years earlier, in 2017, Google announced that it has 2 billion active users. For the company to have added hundreds of millions more to cross the 3 billion active user threshold speaks volumes. When the news broke, many analysts claimed that the figure was probably underreported and that it could be more. This is because Google's figure did not take into account the number of users whose devices use third-party apps not downloaded from the Google Play Store. In China, for example, which is a large market, many users do not use Google's apps and devices. So going by this unverified, but potentially valid statistics, there are likely millions of Android users not captured in this survey. Apple's position. How does this figure compare with Apple though? Well, based on Apple's latest report at the start of 2021, the company announced that it had more than 1 billion iPhones in use worldwide. In contrast, this figure is only 1/3 of Android. Also, based on geographic data released by Apple, a significant population of Apple's users are limited to the US market, which remains the company's largest market. But in other parts of the world, Google's Android is the dominant force. Google will continue to grow. From all indications, Android by Google will continue to grow as more smartphone manufacturers churn out new devices and apps that run on the platform. In addition, there are many new tools and apps that will further boost Google's position. Some new services include new search tools, artificial intelligence apps, features, and processing features. These new tools will only serve to improve the user experience of Android users. So a combination of Google's innovation, smartphone manufacturers, and app developers will boost Android's global standing even more as we progress through the new decade. How did Google do it? When you consider the fact that for years, Apple's iOS was the #1 global mobile phone platform, you will agree that Android has come a very long way. In the first decade of the new millennium, the first Apple iPhone was unveiled, which redefined the global mobile phone industry. 15 months later, Google unveiled the Android smartphone, and the first one went on sale on September 23, 2008. The company partnered with T-Mobile to design and release the G1. The G1 may look like an oddity due to the sleek and modern designs of modern smartphones, but back then it was a hit. Its release was the beginning of a fierce rivalry between Apple and Google, which snowballed into the fiercest tech rivalry in history. By 2011, Android had become the most popular mobile phone platform in the US, prompting Steve Jobs, the founder and then CEO of Apple, to declare a supposed thermonuclear war against Android. Everyone agrees that Apple created the modern smartphone, but Google started to dominate the market by entering into multiple partnerships with developers mobile phone manufacturers, and network carriers. Google also stole a march on Apple by selling its services for low prices, which translated to cheaper phones for the average user. This had a tremendous effect on the global smartphone market. For instance, 86% of smartphones sold in 2020 and the start of 2021 run on Android, not iOS. Another event that pushed Google to innovate was the launch of the iPhone by Apple. Before the launch, both companies were working together in a joint partnership to develop the smartphone. This was revealed by the author of How Apple and Google Went to War and Started a Revolution, Fred Vogelstein. Google had acquired Android, which was a small tech startup, in 2005, so as to gain a foothold in the mobile phone industry. Then, in 2006, Android started developing a software and phone that looked just like the BlackBerry phone. Then, the unthinkable happened. Steve Jobs then went on a radically different path and announced a completely different device on stage at a January 2000 event. The head of Android at the time, Andy Rubin, was caught off guard like many of his executives. At the time of the unveiling, he was on the road and had to tell his driver to pack the car somewhere safe so that he could watch Jobs' presentation online. Apple's iPhone was so radically different and brilliant that it made Google decision makers scrap the phone they were working on because it would be too inferior. They did scrap it and redesigned a new Android phone. The first Android phone was released in 2008 with a larger touchscreen than the iPhone. However, this was not the threat to Apple because the iPhone has certain advanced features that the Android phone did not have. The strategy that posed a threat to Apple was the fact that Google did not monopolize the platform, but made it open to other smartphone companies by selling its access for a license fee. This was the selling point that catapulted Google to the roof. By 2010, the platform was flooded with companies like Motorola, Samsung, and HTC, all selling their Android phones at far cheaper prices. The few phones actually produced by Google were the Nexus and the Pixel. Most of the others belonged to other phone manufacturers. This army of vendors made Android the most popular platform, with each manufacturer introducing new innovations to make the platform more exciting and competitive. Of course, Steve Jobs was incensed with Google's strategy to sell access to third-party phone manufacturers for a fee. His strategy was to control the user's experience, but with an Android, the reverse was the case. To make matters worse, the late Mr. Jobs had faced a similar experience with Microsoft, when the software company chose to sell access of its software to computer manufacturers. That move saw Microsoft overtake Apple as the largest seller of software tools, and he feared Google was going to take the same approach and enjoy the same results. He was right. Steve Jobs was not happy. Shortly after his death, his biography was released, where he was quoted to have declared war on Android, which he referred to as a stolen product. He also pledged to spend every billion of Apple to right what he perceived as a wrong by Android. Even after his death, Apple followed through with this threat, and we saw and continue to see Apple launch expensive lawsuits against Android phone manufacturers like Motorola and Samsung. This move did not deter Google though. When co-founder Larry Page was asked about Jobs' declaration of war, he responded with a slight by asking, "How is that working?" Both companies have benefited immensely from the rivalry. Over the last decade, both companies have benefited immensely from the rivalry, with both of them having a combined 4 billion users on their platform, which is more than half of the global population. Google's money-making products include Google Search, Google Maps, and Gmail, which dominate the global industry in these niches. Apple, on the other hand, continues to make most of the profit when it comes to smartphone sales. The company also dominates the high-end section of the industry, and it makes more money than all Android phone makers combined. So the answer to the question regarding if Apple will be able to compete with Google does not have a clear answer. Apple primarily makes profit off its iPhones and apps on its iOS store. Google only sells licensed access of its Android platform to manufacturers, but also makes money off other services. So it depends on how you look at it. If you judge strictly on the basis of numbers, Android's more than 3 billion users gives it the edge. If you judge in terms of sheer profit, Apple is still number one. So by our estimation, Apple will remain competitive due to the brand loyalty it has already established with iPhone users and its ability to constantly innovate.